This is a very special day. We have brought back to campus some graduates who have done exceedingly well in the profession of civil engineering, the practice of civil engineering. These 6 individuals are sitting right in front of you right now. Before we get started, before I introduce them to you, I'm going to introduce you guys to them. These folks are going to be graduating in May. The project that we mentioned at breakfast this morning is our University of Nebraska new engineering building, 6-story building. It involves transportation aspects, structural aspects, try to approach a net zero aspect energy-wise on the building. We had some remediation problems with an old gas station on the corner that they had to do some soil remediation. We're putting in a park just north of the building, a commons area for all the students. We have 15 engineering teams. Each team operates independently as an entrepreneurial entity. They have a project manager, an assistant project manager, and a logo and a company name. And so we're trying to prepare them for when they finish here in May and get out into the initiation of their career track. Okay. So with that, what I'd like to do now is introduce our 6 alums to you folks. Okay, so let's begin. Let's start with, on the far end down there, that fellow from California, Paul Amico. Paul finished his BSCE here in 1966. He's with Carollo Engineers. What's that?
Not that one. 96.
What did I say?
66.
Did I say 66? I really said that. I really said that. BSCE 1996.
Nope.
Well, let's try that again. All right.
We're listening.
Carollo Engineers, okay. It's in Fresno, California. He's project manager and vice president, formerly a senior project manager with the CH2M Hill out of Indianapolis. He currently focuses on 2 cutting-edge water reuse programs and on delivering water and wastewater projects for clients throughout central Indiana. So, glad to have you with us, Paul.
Thank you.
You betcha. Okay. John Brand. John Brand, right here on my left.
Morning, all.
Licensed engineer, as is Paul, as I think just about everybody here is. So, BSCE 1983. 1983, he is president of Butler, Fairman, Seifert in Indianapolis. Structural engineering, water resources, been involved in business development and legislative advocacy, and has a great love of working with others in a team environment. Okay. Sharon Demal-Saber, right down there, she received her PhD here in 1986. President of the Applied Engineering Management Company, kind of known by their letters of AEM, in Herndon, Virginia. AEM is an engineering and information technology company involved in water resources and optimization methods for the operation of reservoirs and other hydraulic structures. John Hart. John Hart is a PE. He's also licensed as a structural engineer, as is a BSCE in May of 1990. He's president of Peak Engineering Incorporated out of Denver, Colorado. And he has a PE registration in 30 states. And as you've realized, we had a lecture here recently from the National Precast Concrete Association. He was also licensed. Remember that? He was licensed in 30 states. So it's very important as a civil to have that licensure, that's for sure. He coordinates overall efforts of the structural design team at the firm and is responsible for quality control there as well, and many other things for sure. Clifford Kassoff. Yes, indeed. PE, BSCE 1973, MSCE 76. President CEO of Triad Engineering and Contracting Company out of Cleveland, Ohio. Responsible for all aspects of the business, including management, engineering, estimating, operations, and administration. He provided geotechnical evaluations for tunnel design. I guess this was CSOs, the deep tunnel project that you get involved in. Okay. And Ursel Özdemir, right here, BSCE 1997, founder, President, CEO of Keystone Construction and Keystone Realty Group in Indianapolis. Founded in 2002, his firm has become one of the fastest growing construction and real estate development companies in the state of Indiana. He's also the owner of Indy 11 men's professional soccer team, which he started in 2013, and recently expanded that to include a professional women's team in 2021. So we civil certainly do a lot of different things, broad things, interesting things, and that's reflected in the folks that we have here with us this morning. So with that, let's begin with Paul and have Paul tell us a little bit about what he's been doing and how he got there and how you might get there someday. Paul.
Thank you. So again, Paul Amico. I'm a Vice President and Project Manager with Carollo Engineers. Carollo is the largest consulting firm in the United States that's dedicated completely to water. That's all we do. So water, wastewater, reclaimed water. I like to tell people it's quantity, quality, if it's dirty or if it's clean, whatever, we can deal with it. So I've been in California now for about 8 years, but before that I jumped around a bit: Kentucky, Indiana, California, back to Indiana. Worked for a number of different firms before settling in Carollo. I now run our Fresno office as the office manager, and we serve a territory in Central California that goes from the Central Coast over by San Luis Obispo to Fresno, up to Modesto, Turlock area, which is near the Bay Area, and then down to Bakersfield. So I have served predominantly municipal clients my entire career. So served cities and small communities and large cities, large projects, small projects, everything to do with urban water infrastructure. So the time I spent in Indiana, I spent mostly doing combined sewer overflow work, wet weather work, old infrastructure rehab, and now in California, I moved there initially to do a drinking water program. As you can imagine, water in California is very, very important. So the city of Fresno invested about $450 million in water infrastructure to do what we call as conjunctive reuse or conjunctive use of water resources. So they have access to surface water, groundwater, and then reclaimed water. So we built a big water treatment plant, and I was the project manager on an $80 million pipeline project. So that got me into construction, and I have determined, now that I figured out what I want to do when I grow up, that I really, really like serving as a project manager for communities doing large water projects. Specifically, my passion really is construction. When we get into construction, to be the project manager over that, managing the consultants and the contractors.
All right, thank you, Paul. Appreciate that. Let's go to John Brand at this point. John?
Good morning, all. It doesn't seem like that long ago that I was sitting out there and thinking about the what, the where, the when, the why, and how much in my career going forward. And for me, I was married back in 1983, so what was most important when I was sitting in your spot was the where. My wife and I both wanted to stay in central Indiana. The what was to be able to get out there and learn a lot and be challenged. Who to do it with was very important, to be challenged as well. And the last thing on our consideration list was how much. I took the lowest of 3 offers that I got in the way of salary. So those are things that you're all thinking about as you go forward in your career. As I started the workforce in 1983, being married and with a child arriving, a paycheck and a good job was very important, was able to do that. So my why was support of family. But the company, Butler Fairman, that I started with gave me those things in being challenged. In 1983, I was a structural engineer, did bridges, managed projects, similar to what Paul talked about, but this for bridges and transportation projects. Very important to obtain my PE registration. I was encouraged by my company to do that. That is an important thing if you ultimately want to own an engineering business. So learned about bridges, roads. In 1989, I got a question from the principals of the company. What do you think about water and wastewater? It's like it never really appealed to me. Why are you asking? They sent me back to Purdue to learn the wet side of the business, to do water and wastewater. That was a great experience to come back up here and learn a different side of it. So in 1996, became a principal in the company. Was very fortunate to have experience in both the wet and the dry side of what our business would be. And these things come to us in questions. 1998, was promoted to president. Something went along with that. What do you think about overseeing our business development and our sales and in winning work? So it became learning a lot about the Sandler sales method, consultative selling, which is entirely different, and it was completely new from something that I didn't have exposure to that as an undergraduate. So that was exciting. Having those opportunities to do these different facets of the business was really important. At a young age, I wanted to own a business. My father had an electrical contracting business. Came to Purdue, thought I wanted to be an electrical engineer. After 10 minutes of seeing what electrical engineering is about, civil was appealing because of the team. I'm working in teams. You can see electrical was pretty abstract. Civil was very real world. At the end of the day, what we do in civil is we make communities better. That is a really cool thing, to be able to make communities better. So I've been president of Butler Fairman since 1998. It's been wonderful. It's the only place that I've worked since graduation. 40 years later, the where that I do things is still really important. We have 4 children, 14 grandchildren. Our 14 grandchildren within a 40-minute radius drive time. So how cool is that my wife and I are able to be with our family. I've really enjoyed the team part, and then just the lifelong learning. These questions of what do you think about water and wastewater? Go learn it. Selling, what do you think about that? It's been wonderful. So I encourage you all to think about who you want to do these things with, why you want to do it, where you want to be, and how much is a consideration, and whether that's the top of your list or the bottom. If you're excellent in what you do, the how much will take care of itself for your company and for you personally.
Okay, thank you, John. Let's move on to Sharon.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. I think my journey was different than most of the gentlemen here. I received my graduate degree from Purdue in 1982, so I've been away for 40 years. My undergraduate was from the University of Maryland. Back then, I was pretty much the only woman in my class. I got into engineering because there was a scholarship for women in engineering. I knew nothing about engineering. No one in my family even had a college degree, but I was encouraged to go in because of strong math, science skills, and so I got into it. Didn't really know what it was all about. My scholarship was with the Washington Suburban Sanitary Commission in the DC area. They do water, wastewater work. So I talked to a lot of people there. They were all civils, and they said, "Oh, you don't want to do electrical. You don't want to do, do civil. That's where it's all at." So I didn't really do a lot of research, to be completely honest. Happened into civil and absolutely loved it. And when I graduated in 4 years, I had a lot of job offers. And I remember my mom saying to me, "You do realize that all of these jobs are better paying than any job your father has ever had." My family is all like blue collar workers, and she's like, "Why are you even considering graduate school?" And I wasn't really even sure why I was considering grad school. Just everybody's like, "You're really strong, you should think about grad school." So my husband was then fiance was going to grad school, so made the decision, yeah, why don't I do that? And came to Purdue. I was a Purdue fellow and studied here for 3 years. And again, absolutely loved the time here. I was here when we made it to the Final Four in basketball. So it was electric on campus. Great memories. I have to say, starting my engineering firm was one of the best things I ever did. I had practiced for 4 years, and I strongly want to reinforce the idea, get your PE. And by the way, get it early. Don't wait. I know a lot of people that waited in their career to get their PE and just kind of brushing off all the work you have to do and trying to remember how to take tests and all that. That's awful after you've been away for a while. But I got mine pretty much right after my PhD. I'm currently licensed, I think, in 5 or 6 states. It comes and goes depending on the work that you're working with. But yeah, my firm, we have 300 employees currently. We're in 26 states. We started talking, we do the resilience analysis work. We actually are the originators of something called PARE, which is the Program to Assist in Risk and Resilience Evaluation, PARRE. It works for water, wastewater, and transportation, which is huge right now because of the infrastructure bill. I got interested in that because we have policies in the United States that are weak. If you have a roadway, for example, that gets flooded out, okay, federal highway, the rule is you build back to the way it was. That's really stupid. It's just going to get flooded out again. You know, so the resilience evaluation is a critical component right now into getting funding to show that you can build it back stronger, better, and the life cycle costs are going to be reduced. And so that's kind of my focused area now. I have a long storied career in wastewater treatment. We do all of the training for state departments around the world, all of the embassies in water, wastewater treatment, which is really exciting. So I get to travel the world. And it's nice because the U.S. has a standard, and they say even though this country doesn't have the same standards that we do for water, wastewater, we're going to build it to U.S. standards. And so we get involved with lots of different cultures. I tell you, there's nothing like a civil engineering degree. I absolutely love it. You all are at the best part of your life. May is coming soon. You just have to get past Dr. Jacko's class.
Let's not forget this is a core course. You got to pass it to graduate.
That's right.
Yeah, very.
So, but thank you for having me.
Thank you, Sharon. Okay, John Hart.
Morning, everybody. It's good to see a lot of ladies out there. I think when I was in this class in 1990, there might have been 4 or 5. And now in my 20-person firm, it's about half women, and including my two partners that are taking over for me. And so it's nice to see that out there in this group. I started out an architecture program at Ball State. I thought, from middle school, I thought I was going to be an architect. And that lasted about a month when I went to Ball State, and quickly changed to pre-engineering and transferred over here eventually, and struggled when I first came here. But got back on track and got through and started my career in Indianapolis working in a huge GM plant, a 4 million square foot facility for Allison gas turbines it was then. Just trying to keep the place from falling down. I'm a structural engineer, the only structural engineer in the place right out of school, which was a challenge. But it gave me a lot of good experience on, I learned how to make decisions. I didn't have somebody to go to, and my boss was a mechanical engineer. Knew a little bit about welding from working in a shipyard, and that was about it. So so I pored over old drawings and learned a lot that way. And another thing I did from early on, computers were just starting to be used more in that time, and so being interested in that, I kind of jumped in and learned some things that some of the other people in the office didn't really want to deal with. Some of the older guys just didn't want to get into it, so I enjoyed that. Make yourself indispensable. Find something that you like to do in the office, and develop that, and your supervisors appreciate that, and it's a way to move up, and a way to stay in if things start to go bad. Worked for a consulting firm in Indianapolis for a while, and then moved to Denver. Something I always wanted to do from childhood, is moved to the mountains, and really enjoyed being there. Been with the same company for 25 years now. I was president and ran the company for 13 years. Just recently stepped into a different role, chairman of the board, and kind of into more of a mentor role now. But in a small company, which coming from a GM plant of 6,500 people to now a company that's varied between 10 and 20 people. Again, you get to know everybody, and we still work in a lot of. We work all over the country. As a company, we're licensed in 44 states. I'm licensed in over 30, and so that licensing is very important. Getting your exam, license as a PE and SE in multiple states. just because we work with the architects that are all over the country, so it gives us an opportunity to do that. A lot of distribution work, which has really exploded in the last few years. You see the Amazon trucks everywhere. You can probably shop online a lot, and so we do a lot of distribution facilities to allow that to happen. And so that's kind of our niche, and we've developed that, and nationally known for it, even as a small company. So again, I had an opportunity to make myself indispensable by developing some things internally in the office. And again, computers were still fairly new then, and developing some things there helped the company expand and got me into ownership and allowed me to move up. So that's how I was able to do it. And maybe some of that will work for you as well. Thank you.
Okay, John, thank you very much. Okay, let's go to Cliff Hazoff.
Well, I come from a different perspective. I came here, I'm the old guy here, by the way. And W129 was here back then. I'm on the construction side. And I came here, to get my civil engineering degree already knowing that I was headed toward construction. My family was in the underground business in Cleveland, and I pretty much had decided that was where I was headed. Got my CE degree, stayed on back when Professor Hancher and Havers were here. They were just starting the construction engineering management school, and I was one of the first ones and took accounting and finance over at Cranard because I knew I was headed into business, not only just on the engineering things that I would be doing, but I was going to have some business background. So I went over and they helped me write a curriculum to get my MSCE and took some of the core subjects at the business school and then filled in with some other subjects here. I was one of the first, and then went through the oral exams and everything you had to do to graduate as a graduate. But, so you say, okay, what did you do with your engineering when you got out? Well, I went back into the family business, and we had already started specializing in tunnel construction. And for those of you, I know you're working on a building, and of course when you're in school here, structures is dominant, right? It is. Steel's dominant. There isn't a whole lot of talk of underground work except on the geotech side. Well, believe it or not, there's an enormous field out there in tunnel construction because of the combined sewage overflow issues going on in many cities, transportation demands for subway systems. There's an unlimited expanse of work in the United States. So much so that a lot of the foreign contractors have started to come in to bid it. And there's only a limited number of us that do this because it's so specialized. So when I got out, as all of you will feel when you leave here soon, you're ready to conquer the world. I will tell you that you'll be ready, but you'll know nothing. And you'll need to get out there and get experienced and have a mentor that you can work with. And that's, in my family, that's pretty much what I did. I not only was trying to understand all the geotechnical issues with our tunnel construction, and we had a lot of different geotechnical forms in Cleveland and all kinds of different forms of construction we were involved in. Is it glamorous like the skyscraper? No. But is it challenging? Yes. Okay. And I was also dealing with the business side. In addition to that, in the first 8 to 10 years, I was progressing and became a project manager and was running some of our larger projects. We had family issues. Family businesses, you can Google it and you'll see all kinds of stories about family businesses. And my father and my uncle were partners forever, long time. My cousin and I were fire and water. We just did not see eye to eye. There were philosophical differences, a lot of things. I'd like to tell you I was the perfect guy, but whether you realize it or not, when you encounter people, which is what we do, we are in a people service business, there's a lot of things that go on. And philosophy and ethics and a lot of things come into play. So we split up in 1987. And I had decided with my father that we weren't going to stay in the entity. There were a lot of reasons for that. We went off on our own, took some of the equipment with us. I had no employees. A few of the employees came up to me and said, "Where are we going?" moved the equipment out to a farm field, worked out of the house, had to figure out how to start up and start bidding, had to figure out how to get insurance. X years later, we're now in Cleveland, Charleston, and we're doing work in Texas. Pretty busy in the tunnel field. That's where I apply most of my engineering work. Certainly when you're here, you're going to walk out of here with your mind trained to be an analytical, logical thinker. Those are traits that are invaluable. You will always use those. The business challenges you go through are enormous, in addition to the engineering challenges. Tunnel construction has geotechnical challenges every day. You have to know how you want to build a project before you can bid it. You have to take apart the plans. Even though our consultants have done all the design, you have to go through all of your own engineering evaluations to bid it. You have to decide about the equipment. We refurbish and rebuild all of our own tunnel boring machines. That's a little unusual. We've gotten that advanced. So we're able to do all that vertical integration of what we're trying to build, and we have engineers in-house that deal with that. So as many will walk off into the consulting side, I would also tell you there's a whole lot to do on the construction side. I always love being out in the field. My brothers, my sons will tell you the greatest joy I get is being out in the middle of the men or the people and the girls. We have girls. You know, it's watching things get built, understanding the things you put together and seeing how they get done. So that's where we are today, and I'm happy to be a contractor.
Okay, very good, Cliff, thank you. And Ursula Osmer, please.
Well, I am the young guy. Younger, I should say, relative here. I think I've been graduated 25 years ago. You know, people say there are a lot of things changed, obviously, over 25 years, but one thing is good to see that it hasn't changed is that the last row is still full. And that will be where I would be usually, right about 8:30, right when about the class starts. And it's good to see that half of the class shows up right on time, not a lot earlier. So it's great to be back to this class. Mine is a little bit different also as international student, Turkey, born and raised. I came here to go to college. As some mentioned that I also knew that I was going to be in construction, but I thought having civil engineering degree would be very helpful to know multiple disciplines and be preparing myself for the construction. I didn't intend to stay in the United States originally. I was going to go back, but I had a last internship project in Indianapolis for the airport, building a large maintenance center for United Airlines. And then I met some people I work for. They're all Purdue guys, and I decided that I wanted to stay in the United States. And not only that, I ended up actually moving to Indianapolis because U-Haul was $29. It's cheap to move to Indianapolis. Sales tax was 5%, and it was cost of living was great. And Indianapolis at that time being nice, a little bit past, but great city to be based from, and having Purdue as a resource really for future projects. I always knew I wanted to work for myself, and so I had that kind of in my mind. And I see our professor Dulce here, and I was a big fan of her, and that's one reason I actually focused more on construction. And I think it's one of the grades that I had an A. That's probably why I like the class more. And I've learned that really stuff that you have more passion for, whatever it is. I think the earlier you figure out things you have passion for, you seem to enjoy that more and get more engaged and learn more and be more successful, because it doesn't become as a job. It doesn't become something that you have to show up for. You want to get up. You're excited to get up and go do that. So that was really my passion more in construction. But as we were talking earlier, civil engineering really provides a very, very special background. Depends on, regardless what you do, from structural, geo, water, transportation in life. It prepares you to be ready for whatever you do. I started a construction business and evolved to real estate development, and as mentioned before, also I love soccer and sports, and started the soccer team about 9 years ago. So for me, it's really everything we do touches engineering, because every day you get up, regardless where you're in the management, you're designing it, that allows you to be prepared for the real life issues. And I tell people that I don't remember, I'm not as good of an engineer as some of the people here, but I do know that I might not remember exactly Bernoulli theory from hydraulics to transportation, designing the getting off a highway. I do know that I can go a little faster than it says because there's always a safety factor. I do know when you get elevator, when we build buildings, that why the elevators do a little shift. But it really, it's every day you wake up, there's another problem. Every hour you deal with. But I do know that what Purdue has done a great job, especially civil, is to prepare ourselves for the problems that we're going to face, and we're problem solvers. And this is what really our faculty has done an amazing job to teach us to get ready for the real world problems, whatever it is, to do that. So, and again, we're in construction and real estate development business mainly.
Okay, thank you, Ursula. All right, before I open the floor up this morning for your questions, I'm sure you have a lot of them, I want to introduce to our 6 honorees today the TAs that we have for this class. We're very fortunate. Sue Khalifa, Sue, stand up over there. Sue comes to us from Chicago. She was 17 years in structural engineering in Chicago as a consultant and licensed engineer. And so we're very happy to have her. Thank you.
Thanks.
And then next to her is Faraz Janabi. Faraz is a licensed engineer as well from the country of Iraq. And he's our geotechnical expert. So he gets down and dirty and helps us with the foundations. Thank you, Faraz. And then structurally, again, we have Johnny Condori. Johnny is a licensed engineer in the country of Peru, South America. And he helps the students with our structural problems. So thank you, Johnny. So we're very fortunate to have these folks all with PEs. And that's unusual. So we're very, very happy about it. Helps everybody. And okay, now how about your questions, folks? Let me see a hand out there for a question. In the back, please stand and state your name.
My name is Jacob Denson. I started noticing a trend with most principals and senior engineering staff. Typically started out in a small company where they were the only engineer or they had one of two, and then they worked their way up. What would you say to us looking for jobs? Is it better to start in a small company or a big company if you plan to work our way up?
Okay, small company or big company? Where to start?
I'll chime in on that. I interviewed with 2 bigger companies and 1 smaller. For me, a career path to own a business was likely to happen quicker with a smaller company. Kind of an aha moment for me was I did an interview with a large company that did nuclear power plant designs, talked to the younger engineer, interview. It's like, what have you been doing here the first 2 years? And I've been designing HVAC hangars. What else have you been doing? It's like, I've been designing HVAC hangars. So for me, that I didn't want to get that narrow early in my career on the exposure, that broad exposure where the multiple disciplines. That's what appealed to me. But there's some individuals that want to hone in on something in particular. So that broad exposure, being asked to do things that take you outside of your comfort zone and not things that are not repetitious, that's what appealed to me. And a smaller company, you generally get that more so than a bigger company where you might be asked to specialize.
All right.
I was going to say I've got a little different perspective on that. I've worked for both small and big companies. Before I came to Carollo, which is not that big of a consulting firm, I worked for C.H. Hill, that's now Jacobs. They have about 50,000 people around the world. The cool thing about a big company is just the broad variety of projects you can get, especially if you're doing civil. We did everything there as opposed to at Carollo, we do water. But the one thing I would say is if you like big projects or you like the ability to win big projects, if that really fires you up, then go work in a small office for a big company because you get that same flavor. So you're going to have a bit more exposure to people and the leadership that will allow you to advance in your career. And so the opportunities are more plentiful to move around the world or the country if you're working for a bigger company. But I agree with John in terms of when you come out, you can find a mentor, you can find somebody that can really allow you to dig in and will mentor you closely in the business, then that is probably more valuable than the size of the company you're working for.
Anybody else want to chime in on that topic
Well,
of small versus large?
I started out in a large company working for GM, and there were 7 layers of management above me at the plant that I was working in. But I worked in a small department, which was almost like a small consulting firm for the rest of the plant. So I learned a lot, but then, but I didn't really have opportunities to advance because that company built aircraft engines. My job was to keep the building standing, so I wasn't really in the main focus of the business. So getting into a smaller company, working with the people that own the company directly, you need to walk into the owner's office. I had one layer of management over me instead of 7. Gave me a lot better opportunity to become an owner myself. So I think there can be advantages to starting in small or starting in big. It's what you learn from that experience. Again, starting in a small department in a big company wasn't that different than working in a small company.
Okay, very, very good. Okay, next question. Stand right up and go ahead and give us your question.
I'm Zach Ramirez, and I was curious. A lot, like you had mentioned, the man from the Precast Association was a PE in 30 states.
Yes.
And I think a couple others had mentioned that they were also PEs in 30 states. How is it that you become registered in all these different states? And is 30 a common?
Good question, yeah. How do you become registered in 30 states, and how do you keep track of what the dates are for re-up?
And the CEUs.
What's that?
The
CEUs.
Oh, yes, that's right.
So I'll jump in on that one too. Yeah, I'm licensed in 32 states. For me, taking the testing revisions, getting your first license is the big one, because a lot of states offer comedy, so that you can, once you're licensed in one state, you basically just have to fill out forms to get licensed in other states. Now, as a structural engineer, there are places that are different. West Coast has seismic requirements. There's some additional testing that has to be done to get licensed in those states. But once you get that, then it opens you up to even more states where you can get licensed by basically paperwork. Also, if you create a record through the NCES, they will hold all your information. And so a lot of states, instead of filling out a 15-page form, now you fill out a 2-page form, because you're basically referring them to your NCES record, and so they get all that information. You don't have to keep track of it as much. As far as the managing all that, yeah, I have an assistant that's half of her job, is keeping track of the licenses for not just me, but other people in the firm. And when are things due? Keep track of all my continuing education. Hey, you got to get 10 more hours before the end of the year. That kind of thing. So it is a big job to keep track of all. So because they all have different states have different rules, and some of them are every year renewal, some are 2 years, one of them is 3 years. So it's a big effort.
Of those 30 that you have, how many of those were reciprocal to the first license in a given state that you got? In other words, you were licensed in Indiana. How much reciprocity did you find among other
So
states?
that's probably most of the states, probably 20, maybe 23, something like that.
Okay.
Where it was reciprocity where my Indiana license would have been enough to get it, whereas there's some other states that there's more and more states that are switching to requiring structural license, not just for PE. Indiana is not one of them. Indiana, you can, as a PE, you can stamp pretty much anything you're willing to take responsibility for. Colorado's the same, but Illinois requires an NCE. It has for a long time. But Nebraska, Utah, West Coast states, Nevada, Arizona, a lot of states have SE requirements. So, but I'd say about 2/3 of my states there's
Okay.
just my civil from Indiana was enough.
Yeah, that makes it easy, the reciprocity. I think in Florida, that's a little different. When I was going to try to get licensed, I had to jump through a bunch of hoops to get licensed in Florida. Yeah, a little different. Other questions that you might have? Yes, please, go ahead and stand up. And state your name and tell us.
Hi, I'm JT. I just want to say thank you all for coming to talk to us today. I appreciate it. What's the largest risk that you've taken, and what did you learn from that experience?
The largest risk, is that right?
Yes.
The largest risk. Okay. Yeah.
I can take that one. I left a pretty good job in 2009, right at the height of the recession, and started an office for CH2 Hill in Indianapolis. CH had not historically been operating in Indiana, and so I had actually was contemplating going out and starting my own firm, and I contacted an old colleague of mine, and he said, well, you can have all the headaches of starting a firm, but you can come work for us, and he was absolutely right. It was like starting a franchise within a large organization. You had to demonstrate your value to them. I had to put a business plan together. I had to demonstrate that I could generate revenue with a cost. There was a lot of pressure on me to use regional resources as opposed to grow locally, but the city of Indianapolis and other Indiana communities want you to be local, want the work, they don't want you to take the work and ship it to Denver or anywhere else. So I learned an enormous amount about how to run a business, really through that, and really it was a very entrepreneurial thing, and it was all done within the context of a company that if you don't perform, you're just going to be cut. But the one thing that did do for me was it ended up moving me to California, and that's really honestly where I figured out what I wanted to do with my life. So it was a really great experience, and I would just say, if you have those opportunities, calculate the risk, but then discount what. I'll look to the folks that run businesses and say, just set aside about 30 to 50% of what you think is going to go wrong, and just go for it.
All right.
I'll say similar early in my career when I got the question of what do you think of water and wastewater engineering, I'm like, it never appealed to me. Why are you asking? There's an opportunity within the company to progress. That was way out of my comfort zone. I was doing structural. I loved it. I loved the person that I was working for. There was risk in that, but I think I'll say it was insured in the principals in the company, or they were advocates of, John, this is going to work. We're going to support you. We'll pay for it, to go to Purdue and learn this. It felt like a big risk at the time. Now looking back, and I suggested to younger engineers do the same thing. Their eyes get really big, but to give them some insurance for that risk on how it can work.
I would add on, but for me, I had offers like from good companies like Jacobs and Walsh. At that time, it was $35,000, which was good money. Worked on large projects, and I wanted to have that, but I knew I wanted to do my own business. So obviously, I thought, well, if it doesn't work out, I can always go work for somebody. And the nice thing about engineering is that you're calculating the risk, right? What are the, so everybody has different risk appetite. Some people are more risk takers, some are less, and so it really depends on the person's ability to do that. And we do take risks all the time still, so it's not really just one time. And as you get older, you look, and that also impacts when you don't have anything to lose, right? It's easier to bet on all the come. And when you have more either responsibility, family, or if you have a dollar now, you want to be more thoughtful about not losing a dollar. It varies over your lifetime.
Well, Cliff and Ursal, they price risk every day. I mean, that's what contractors do, right? Where engineering designers or attorneys may identify risk, they'll tell you, but until you get the probability and the dollars, that's their life. In construction, they are pricing risk every day.
That was going to be my comment to you, is that every job with us is a risk, every one. Mainly because when you're putting up building, pretty much things become pretty finite. But I bet the most difficult part of what you were doing was the geotech and the foundation work. The structural work probably wasn't as much. We're in the geotech all the time, and our risk in our tunnel construction is strictly, every bit analysis we do, there's risk. And then you get the job and you're like, oh boy, what did I do? and now I have to build it, and all the systems you put together, you have to make sure they work. And believe it or not, there's changes that occur all the time. So as John said, there's risk all the time.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to say, I think even in a competitive environment, that's the one thing that I've always said, competitive construction bidding, I don't understand that business, or I wouldn't want to take it.
We're lunatics.
Yeah.
And I think the nature of the contract too, if it's cost plus, it's nice, because then, it can be adjusted. If it's firm fixed price, we say live and die by firm fixed price. You can make a nice profit on that. But, you might have a pandemic. There's all kinds of things that are unaccounted for.
As a business owner, you have to have some appetite for risk.
Absolutely.
Otherwise, you're going to be in a project manager or department lead position. But in a business owner, you will take risks that the buck stops there with the owners of the business. That's fun. Most days.
There's
right?
nothing wrong with that. I mean, really, they're all great. It's just you got to figure out who you are and what you want to do. And the earlier you figure out what you want to do, and the question are you small or big companies, I don't think you can go wrong either way. There are pros and cons both, but the earlier you figure out where you want to end up with, the earlier you have that X and Y diagram goes this way instead of, you have an S curve, right? You can get there faster if you have an idea what you want to do in life. And if you don't know, sometimes it's hard to tell that this is what I want to do. I always go with the elimination method. Things that you don't want to do, you write those down and eliminate, and maybe whatever's left over, maybe you have a little more few items to give you an idea what you want to do. So,
Yeah, Paul, when did you arrive on California? Where you wanted to be? No, that.
Oh,
As
yeah.
far as
Yeah.
talk about early on, the where you want to be.
Yeah.
So that can change, family or life circumstances on where you want to do it.
I did it twice.
All right.
That's a great question.
The other thing I want to bring up is when you're younger, little things are mountainous, sleepless nights occur. But as you develop experience and work your way through those problems, and as I said, you get this analytical tool by leaving here. You learn how to deal with it and risk, even though it's part of your life. You learn how to manage it. And you understand how to deal with risk and where you should deal with risk. It just becomes part of the process.
Please, another question right here.
Hi, my name is Iman. So from your bios and the stuff you've shared, it's evident that y'all have gotten involved in opportunities outside of your company or even this industry. So I'm wondering how you went about identifying those opportunities and what suggestions you have for us as we kind of step outside the structure university has given us.
How to identify opportunities as you leave here is the question. Okay.
There are many opportunities within our businesses to do them, our industry. There's also ones outside of it. I oversee sales and business development now for our team. I encourage people that have an interest in that. Go sign up for a non-for-profit. Benefit that entity. Go learn to ask people to donate. I mean, it's similar to if you want to win an engineering job, you have to state the reason and the benefit for it. Find some things that are outside of what we do technically, but might be a similar experience through nonprofits or organizations to benefit them. If you think that business development or sales might be something that would be interesting, go kick the tires in another area, benefiting. That's an example where you can get outside of our industry or our community to find out things that you like to do well and to result to get to your passion. Some people get up in the morning, it's like, I want to go ask them for money to benefit this wonderful charity. Others like, I'd rather go do some things to volunteer there rather than ask them to do something. Find your niche, find your way that you can help.
One last question.
I would add on this.
Go ahead.
For me, that's a really one thing that I think we can do as better civil engineers, right? On the impact of the community and the social side. And you're graduating, so it's maybe not relevant, but I was in the ASCE treasurer here and the Purdue Senate as well as raise money. And I asked these guys, they might not remember when I was chairing the finance committee for Great Lakes Conference, regional conference. All these guys were nice to give money to the, and that carried on to the real life, getting engaged and not-for-profit that John mentioned. And I think that's the part that we kind of says, well, I'll do when I have more time and more money, right? There's always something in between. So the earlier you can get engaged in your community, wherever you are, either it's a committee and a not-for-profit that you have passion for, and as you get older, you get on their boards. That helps you to build a networking in the community. And maybe if you work for somebody, opportunities to advance your career, or if you own your business, obviously additional value. And you're doing something good. You feel good about yourself, as well as you're helping the community at the same time. So the earlier you can get engaged, I would highly recommend that.
Very good. Okay, I think we're going to have to bring it to a close because the other class may be coming in. But if you have a question, then at 10:30 these folks are going to be down in the Wood Commons. So come by and you can have one-on-one with some of these folks and get some more questions answered that you may have. Okay, so at this point in time, let's go ahead and thank ourselves and thank them.